I waited months to build this PC because of the 7800X3D was coming out, and I think I made a mistake. You see, what I have here is the most powerful mini ITX system that you could ever possibly conceive of building. It's got the Ryzen 7 7800X3D, which is one of the fastest gaming chips that's ever been made. But as many reviewers have noted, it's also remarkably power efficient. So it works particularly well in small ITX form factors like this and makes it so that you can keep it cool. But we also put all of these parts into a case that allows us to fit an RTX 4090. And while this thing runs like a machine, I'm not sure we made the right decision when it comes to this CPU right here. Because this thing launched at the beginning of April of 2023. It's everything that we were expecting for AMD to release with the Ryzen 7000 chips. Has the fast IPC increase of Zen 4, has 3D V-Cache to allow for maximum gaming, and doesn't have the weirdness that the 7900 and 7950X3D have that I covered in that video right up there. This is essentially the perfect gaming chip, and we went to Micro Center to actually pick it up on the day of launch, had to wait in line behind dozens of people, and we managed to get our 7800X3D because AMD has plenty of stock for it. And while we are anticipating giving away the 7800X3D with a system in the future, what we're giving away right now is this Fractal North PC with a 13600K and a 3070 Noctua edition. It's a great color scheme. And you can potentially win that by coming to watch us over on Twitch, which is where we did the Micro Center live stream. And the reason that I can build PCs like this, or the PCs that we're giving away, is because of today's video sponsor, Micro Center. Because me and my teammate Kyler showed up at launch day for the 7800X3D, waited in line, and got one of the plenty that were in stock. It was a great time. Micro Center sponsored that trip, and they're sponsoring today's video. Because if you're looking to build a PC for yourself, get PC parts, or you're even a tinkerer in other fields in the electronics hobby section, Micro Center should be the store that you should be checking out first before you go anywhere else. And excitingly, they have a brand new store that's going to be opening this coming summer in Indianapolis. This is their first store opening in 8 years, and it adds on to the 25 locations that they have nationwide. Additionally, they're going to have 2 more stores opening in the US by 2025, but for the Indianapolis opening that's happening this summer, if you click the link in the video description, you can get a free 128 gig flash drive for visiting the Indianapolis store. But on top of that free flash drive deal, they have a ton of other things for you to check out. They have 30,000 items in stock in things like PC builds, keyboard builds, even for makers and 3D printers. And you're likely watching this video because you're interested in the 7800X3D, which is where they have their first time customer coupon for you to check out. You can get $25 off any CPU that you pick up, the 7800X3D, maybe even the 5800X3D, or any Intel processor, $25 if it's your first time at Micro Center. In-store only, limit 1 per customer, but you can actually discount the price of the CPU to make it a little bit more palatable for your setup. But in case you're looking to put that in a brand new build, they also have a build your own department where you can spec out your PC build, make sure everything's compatible on their website, and then you can even have one of their associates build it same day for you for a small fee so that you get the luxury of a pre-built PC, walk home with a completed assembly, but you get to pick all of your parts yourself. And that would be a great time to check out things like their CPU bundles. If you're looking to upgrade to a latest Ryzen 7000 or Intel, you can actually get great bundles with CPUs and motherboards, CPU, motherboard, and RAM, and they have fantastic pricing. Plus, if you're a first-time customer, that $25 coupon can apply towards those bundles, so you're getting an even greater value. Micro Center is like Candyland for tech enthusiasts. I absolutely love every single time that I can visit there. I love doing these sponsored live streams where we wait out for the parts and we actually get to pick them up day one. Micro Center has been a great sponsor for us. It's been a great time going to visit them, and you should check them out at the link in the video description. Claim your free 128 gig flash drive for visiting the Indianapolis store later this year, as well as getting that $25 coupon if you're a first-time customer for any AMD or Intel CPU. Big thanks again to Micro Center for sponsoring this video. So on paper, this PC has everything that you could possibly want. That 7800X3D, we're on an MSI MPG B650i motherboard, and we have 32 gigabytes of the T-Force Delta RGB DDR5 6000 RAM with cast latencies of only 30. We were at Micro Center trying to figure out what RAM to get for this build, and a Micro Center associate was like, hey, this is the best one that you could possibly get at a great price point, and it fits with the color scheme of the motherboard that we chose here. For storage, we've got 4 terabytes of the crucial P3 Plus. Cooling that 7800X3D, we actually managed to fit a 240mm AIO in here, and it's the ROG Strix LC2. The power supply, which is powering the 7800X3D as well as that 4090, is the Silverstone SX1000 SFXL, which allows us to get get the full power delivery that we could possibly want. We could add in a beefier CPU and still have enough power headroom with that 1000 watt power supply. It's 80 plus platinum rated. Silverstone makes the cables that you can plug directly into the power supply and still have the 16-pin power connector for the 4090. And the 4090 that we're using is one that we also waited out overnight to get from Micro Center back when those launched a few months ago. And hence this gigabyte model right here. And the case is honestly a marvel of mini ITX form. You can see that it has a ton of mesh on all sides, which allows for a lot of breathability. The CPU stays cool. The graphics card not really ever getting above 65 degrees Celsius. This is the SSUPD Meshroom S. We did have to kind of configure things a little bit to make sure that the GPU could fit in here. It doesn't quite work. They include like a right angle DisplayPort cable that should allow you to have it flat right here, but because the GPU is so big, it actually protrudes a little bit. So when I'm gaming on this system, I actually leave it on its side because the GPU can intake from here, the CPU can stay cool with its radiator up front, and the only thing that's really having its fan blocked is the power supply. This thing actually allows for everything to stay cool, to stay under control, and to run super fast. But again, as I mentioned, I waited months to build this because I was waiting for the 7800X3D. I wanted to push this thing to its limits, and with the benchmarks I got, I absolutely did. However, there's something else I think that a lot of gamers need to consider. While the 7800X3D might be the fastest gaming chip on the planet that doesn't need weird tweaking like the 7950X3D does, it's still in a weird situation. AMD has theoretically a better CPU out on the market if you're not paying attention to benchmarks and what reviewers are showing you. Because it's not that reviewers are getting it wrong. The 7800X3D is a mighty fine chip, but it only makes a difference if you're using it in scenarios that you don't usually use it in. Because I put this in a 4090 system, I'm not going to be running my games at 1080p. I'm going to be running them at 4K at high settings. And in that scenario, what you're running into is not a CPU bottleneck, but rather a GPU bottleneck. And so what I found with my testing with the 4090 in here is that we are at a much better value if we choose not to go with the 7800X3D, but rather with the 5800X3D. Because if you go look over on Micro Center's website, this thing is selling for $299, which is a full third less than the 7800X3D. Then you add into the fact that you can get a more affordable motherboard. That comes in at under half of a mini ITX B650. Then additionally, the RAM, again, also cheaper. A T-Force kit of 32 gigs of RAM at DDR4 3600 is $69.99, which is under half of what the DDR5 costs. So for the CPU savings, you're looking at $150. But when you add in the motherboard and the RAM, you're looking at saving $420 versus the 7800X3D. And so if we take a look at the benchmarks, what we find is that if you use the RTX 4090 in 1080p scenarios, yes, the 7800X3D is roughly 12% faster than the 5800X3D at 1080p high. That difference is gonna grow if you lower the settings and you make it more CPU bound, but I don't think that people are using a 4090 that way. And if you go up to 4K, what I found was that there was actually absolutely zero difference between these two chips. In fact, technically the 5800X3D was 0.15% faster, but that's just within the margin of error. Because the thing is, when you're putting this chip in its most desirable use case, that is with a very fast system, you're also running it at settings that you're not going to see as much benefit out of the CPU than you otherwise would. And so just comparing the CPU to CPU, you're paying 50% more to get 0% difference at 4K, or 50% more to get 12% difference at 1080p. But once you add the motherboard and RAM to that, you're actually paying 87.5% more to get onto the latest and greatest for absolutely no difference in a common use case scenario for the 4090. And I think this brings up the discussion that I don't think a lot of people are having enough in the PC industry when it comes to recommendations for gamers. While benchmarks can show you the difference between two different things, they don't give you the context of what you're going to be using them for. A 7800X3D is meant to be used in a flagship system. It is a very expensive processor that needs to be combined with a very expensive motherboard, and so more than likely you're also going to have a very expensive graphics card. And in that scenario, it only works if you're bottlenecked by your monitor. And if that's the case that you're in, you're still spending 87.5% to get 12% better performance than the 5800X3D overall than if you would build it with the deals that you can find at Micro Center or otherwise. But one of the most beneficial things about the 7800X3D launch is what it did to the 5800X3D. It drove the price down on this, and the legacy motherboard support that AMD rolled out with AM4 is still very much there. The price of DDR4 is still really compelling. So what the 7800X3D did was make the 5800X3D the most obvious choice for some of the fastest gaming systems out there. There is no need, really, to spend that extra cash on this Ryzen 7 7800X3D because you're really not getting more out of the typical use case that you would find these chips in. And then you add on to that some regrets that people might be having when it comes to the issues that have been coming up with the 7800X3D, such as the damage that we're seeing when you use memory overclocking. It was a real concern in all of the testing that I was doing. I wasn't 100% sure whether or not my chip was going to survive. Thankfully, as of the time of recording, motherboard vendors are actually rolling out BIOS updates to fix a lot of those issues since they seem to be tied to SoC voltages. But I can't imagine how disappointed I would have been that I waited to make this build for so long versus the 5800X3D, and I would have gotten a chip that died because AMD hasn't figured out how to ship a viable BIOS for it when the 5800X3D has been out for over a year at this point. And so my conclusion is the 7800X3D is a mighty fast chip. We're going to be putting it into a system. We're going to be giving that away. It's going to be a great PC for whoever wins it. But at the same time, if you're spending your own money and you're trying to figure out where you can potentially get that wiggle room, the 5800X3D, especially at $299, especially with Micro Center's $25 coupon to make it $275 if it's your first time with them, that is an absolute no-brainer. And then you're saving $420, which you can use to buy a nice 4K display or a high refresh rate 1440p display, which I think is a better use case of your money versus spending it onto a chip that's going to make minimal difference as you upgrade your monitor down the line. And if you've been watching UFD Tech for any length of time, you would know that I released a video about why I thought people wouldn't end up buying the 5800X3D, and I can confidently say that I was wrong. AMD has done a lot with this chip. It has presented a reality for people to get very close to some of the flagship level performance on a legacy motherboard system for a price point that is honestly incredible. $300 is what they charge for the Ryzen 5 5600X, and now you can buy a flagship X3D processor for that. That is good. I really like it. I also like today's video sponsor, Micro Center. Be sure to check out their Indianapolis store at the link in the video description. Also check out the new customer coupon as well as their CPU bundle deals that you could possibly be looking for. And don't forget that we are giving away PCs basically all the time over on our Twitch channel, so you can come watch us over there. With that being said, I'm Brett with UFD Tech. I'll see you back here in the next video, friends.